Doug and Pam, welcome.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Shashi.
Shashi.
This is
Awesome to be on here.
this screen is so nostalgic, and I'll show you why it's so nostalgic. We met 2 years back, or is it 3 years? Anup, when was it? 2 years?
3 years, around 3 years.
3 years.
Yeah,
Time flies so
three.
fast. 2020.
Yeah.
Great. So what I will do is first, before I introduce both of you, I want to show something. I'll show a video.
Okay.
Okay.
This is so interesting, and I so love, and I kept this video ready for the exact moment. Yeah, so this was in 2020. So all four of us again in the screen. So
That's great.
Low
I'm
Carb
taking a
USA
picture
meets
also.
D-Life in India. And Doug, you're wearing almost the same clothes, almost.
No, that's not. There's no sweatshirt.
I will play this
I
video
have that
for.
in the cupboard, but it's not cold enough for a sweatshirt.
So I'll play the video for a few seconds. We will hear what Anup says. Word again, final word. Anup.
Thank you, Doug, and thank you, Pam, for sparing
Pleasure.
roughly around 100 minutes now. It's big time, and hope to meet again. And as Shashi said, holding conferences is uncharted territory for us.
No, we will help you with pleasure. Don't worry about that.
Yeah, we would need all the help because that is something which we are not having any experience or any knowledge. So sure, we'll be looking at and hope we can do it jointly. Also, that's not an issue.
So thank you. So I'm stopping the sharing here. So this is exactly what we told 3 years back, and again here we are here, and we have invited you for this India's first low carb conference called Metabolic Health Conference, and I'm so happy that finally we could organize.
Yeah. Welcome, Doc.
Yeah, thank you very much.
So I will first introduce both of our distinguished guests, Doug Reynolds and Pam Devine. Doug is the founder and CEO of LowCarbUSA. The original organization was founded in the beginning of 2016, and the initial intention was providing a platform through annual conferences for internationally renowned scientists and medical practitioners to present the ever-increasing body of evidence on the benefit of reducing carbohydrates in the diet and adding healthy fats. I think this was a very big initiative you have taken. It is just that we don't believe, but we have medical practitioners coming in and producing evidence, which is very good. Doug also felt that the education about the power of low carb ketogenic for individuals may not get the information from their medical team or from the mainstream nutrition advice for the practitioner who may be able to prescribe it. And he is also the president and founder of SMHP, Society of Metabolic Health Practitioner, which represents all the researchers and practitioners working to improve the metabolic health around the world through education, training, and support of evidence-based nutrition approach, including carbohydrate reduction as a valid therapeutic option and intervention. And I'm so happy to say that I am one of the accredited member. I am the first SMHP accredited Society of SMHP accredited Metabolic Health Practitioner in India. Me and Roshni Sangani, Dr. Roshni Sangani, we are the only two ones. We had a good discussion with Dr. Roshni. She kicked off the event on the first day. And Pam Devine is the co-founder of LowCarbUSA and also the founding member and full-time volunteer of SMHP. Besides her role as operation manager for LowCarbUSA, Pam has an unyielding advocate for the value of therapeutic carbohydrate reduction and the lifestyle to improve metabolic health. Through her work, she aims to educate individuals and especially health professionals about its science-backed benefits, which holds promise in improving metabolic health and offering benefits, and potential reversal and remission of a long list of medical conditions, which includes diabetes, pre-diabetes, fatty liver, cardiovascular disease, hypertension, even Alzheimer, epilepsy, and all the mental health disorder, which is an upcoming science as of now, and also PCOS. And her mission, clear and unwavering, is to amplify the importance of metabolic health to empower more professionals to be an informed advocate. She had recently earned her MHP accreditation from SMHP in all these endeavors. So I want to welcome both of you to this historic event, Doug and Pam.
Thanks, Shashi, man. It's awesome to be here.
Thank you. We're very honored to be here. And thanks to everybody who's joining in and listening and joining the discussion. It's an honor to be here.
So we'll just briefly know about both of you. Doug, please tell us about your background and what were you earlier and how you came into this low-carb field.
So,
and you have a connection with India also.
I do. So back in the day, I was an electrical engineer, became a software engineer. Software engineering wasn't even a thing back when I was at university. And we were working on a satellite TV set-top box, new one that Bharti Airtel was introducing in India. And I spent about 18 months basically pretty much living in Bangalore, spent some time in Noida, near Delhi, and then our factory was in Chennai, so I'd spent a bit of time there too. Yeah, and you know, I think my story about how I got into this, I've told it on a lot of different podcasts and stuff like that. And Pam always says to me, like, you say the same thing every time. And I say to her, well, that's the story. If I said something different, I'd be making it up, right? But I understand it can also be, and her story and mine are already intertwined. So I feel like maybe this time I'd like her to actually tell the story from her perspective, because I don't even know if it's ever really been recorded. And now that's both our stories about how we got into it anyway.
Fine,
so
you speak, yeah.
Ah, that's funny. Okay. So yeah, our stories intertwined. Prior to learning about low carb, Doug and I were always trying to live a healthy lifestyle. So there were some transitions in our jobs, and but in the background, we were always promoting nutrition, sports nutrition specifically. Doug talks about his background in engineering, but he has a very big background in marathon running. And he often tells that story about how, it was always about carb loading. And so we would bring, volunteering at our local running club, bring what somebody fondly started teasing us about, sugar water, pink sugar water, because it was a carb loading based drink. It had a lot of electrolytes, but it also had a lot of sugar in it. And we all thought that's what you needed to run with. Doug had a history of over 100 marathons, training marathons for ultra marathons, and he always carb loaded. He does remember though getting to the starting line and struggling and thinking, I'm not fit enough, I don't feel well. But those 3 days before, it was pizza and pasta and potatoes and every big plate of carbohydrate that he could get his hands on, because the theory was that your body could suck it up like a sponge and then use it on the day. But he felt terrible. And so, my story talking about nutrition, and healthy eating, I tried to help him with low fat, healthy carbohydrates. So brown rice instead of white rice, and brown whole wheat bread instead of white bread, and eating more vegetables. And I was introducing more fruits. And I was, a healthy breakfast for me, if you think about the beginning of 2015 and before, middle of 2015 and before, was I would make my own oatmeal, and I would put nuts and some dried fruit like raisins and dates, and I'd have a banana and a low-fat yogurt with some fruit. There was very little protein in my breakfast, but it was a lot of carb. And I was shocked to think about how many carbohydrates was in it, because then I went and I got a coffee and it had low-fat milk, but it probably had a lot of sugar. And I learned from my dad and somebody else to put chocolate in my coffee. So I had a dessert coffee, but it was low-fat. And, we would go to work, and by 10 a.m. I was shaking. I was hungry. I had a headache, and I was telling Doug, I have to go over to the delicatessen and get eggs. I wanted like hard-boiled eggs. Thankfully, my body was smart enough to tell me, don't go and get more carbs and sugar. It was like, you're missing the protein and the fat that you never had 2 or 3 hours ago. So I was going and I was getting that. And then lunch was, let me try to eat a salmon and a fresh vegetables from this restaurant that was nearby. And I would go for a walk on the way there and, try to be healthy. I was outside in the sun. That one lunch place, another place had salads with a little bit of protein and low fat. And then I'd walk there and I'd walk back. And we were more active than anybody that we worked with in our office. Everybody was much more overweight than we were, but we were still putting on weight, even though we were walking at lunch, running after work at least twice a week. We were meeting our running club on Saturday. We were doing marathon training runs. We were meeting with them for 5 hours and running on Saturday morning. Doug and I actually both did a martial arts training for 5 years. And during that time, we were leaving work early and driving to martial arts and doing that twice a week, sometimes 2 classes, so 90 minutes of martial arts while we were drinking our sugar drink, mind you. And then getting home and having we did try to get a protein snack, but I'm sure there was quite a few carbs. And Doug got into this really bad habit of pulling out bags of candy, thinking we'd worked really hard. We worked really hard at martial arts and running. We could have more sugar and carbs, and piling chocolate candies in front of us and like divvying them out and giving me some. And I remember sitting on the couch thinking, okay, Doug, I've had enough sugar. I can feel my heart doing this. I was getting super hyperglycemic. I could feel it. I was like, okay, I had enough sugar. Like my heart's racing. It's nighttime and I'm probably supposed to be going to bed within 2 hours or an hour of this time. And I'm thinking, okay, no more sugar tonight. Tomorrow we would do the same thing again. And we didn't understand why we were slowly putting on weight. We thought we were active and we thought we were eating healthy. And I was starting to get very confused about what I was eating. So around mid-2015, somebody sent us an email that we've been working with in the nutrition field. We also did healthy corporate lifestyle expos where we talked to people about what they should do in nutrition. And we got an email that said glucose as a fuel or ketones as an alternate source of fuel. And we didn't know what that was. We were like, wait a second, what is this? And Doug really started going down the rabbit hole of what is a ketogenic diet and what is nutritional ketosis. He started reading Steve Phinney and Jeff Bullock's work, which is a foundation of those 2 expert researchers. If anybody ever wants to go down that rabbit hole, fantastic. They have great books, The Art and Science of Low Carbohydrate Living and Art and Science of Low Carbohydrate for Performance. And we kind of went down the for performance rabbit hole where Doug was really interested in how can I fuel my sport and how can I fuel my running. And as he was going along for about 2 weeks, I said, Doug, are you still reading about that ketogenic diet? And he said, yes, it's fascinating. And I said, 2 weeks straight of reading about the ketogenic diet. But there was so much information even in 2015, but there's even more now. Shashi, I want to tell you something that actually sparked my interest even more was the movie, The Serial Killers, CEREAL, Serial Killers, the movie. Doug put that on, and that actually sparked my attention more than reading a scientific article or a book, because I saw Donald Collins doing an experiment of him starting a low-carb ketogenic diet, and where he was a little bit confused about where he was going to get his nutrition from. Where was he going to get his fuel from? And then he did experiments of shopping and cooking and how did he feel. And then he went and did sport. He was outside doing his little routine of push-ups and sit-ups and outside in a park and doing some running and talking about how he felt. And I started listening to this and I thought, this is really different, interesting. He's not eating grains. He's not eating rice. He's not eating pasta, but he still has energy to do his workout and he's still figuring that out. So that caught my attention. And Doug says to me a few days, maybe a week or two later, okay, he says, Pam, I've got a list and we're going to the grocery store and I have a list of the things I want to get. And I looked at him first and I said, you're going to go to the grocery store with me and you have a list? He always fought with me about going to the grocery store. He says, oh, you go. I don't really feel like going. And just call me when you get here with the groceries and I'll help you bring them in. So what did we buy? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, please go ahead.
So what did we buy at the grocery store? Meat, fish, eggs, bacon. I know you probably don't eat a lot of the different things in India, but that we were looking for. But if you're eating dairy, we were looking for full fat yogurt. It was very hard to find in the low fat yogurt refrigerator case. A little tiny bit of full fat yogurt here down on the bottom of the shelf. Really hard to find, but we did find it. We bought leafy green vegetables. We bought broccoli and fatty meats and pork and all kinds of different things. And we brought it home and said, okay, we're going to do this. And Doug started losing weight really quickly. I, as a woman over 50, or getting to 50 at that time, found it a little harder, but I was getting more and more dedicated to try to figure this out because my pants weren't fitting. That Christmas before, I had asked my parents or my mom on my Christmas list, can I get some of those pants, the stretchy kind that don't have a waistband, because my pants don't fit me anymore and I'm really uncomfortable at work. And so I was dedicated. I was going to do what I had to do, even though it took me a little bit of time because I don't want to throw food away. I didn't want to waste the food that I had in the fridge. And I also needed to adjust my brain that I didn't need the cereals and the bananas and the beans and I didn't go to bread. That was probably easier to give up. Hummus was really hard for me. I really loved hummus and those kind of beans, but they turned to sugar, I learned. So as I learned more, then I was able to cut things out a little bit more. And then I finally started seeing results.
So you lost weight and you took interest into coming to this. So I hope there was no pre-existing medical condition like pre-diabetes or something.
I don't think so. The last test that I had before that was my A1C was 5.4. Now, there were some months in between the time where I had that test and when I started the low carb diet and what I was putting on weight. So I had become, Doug and I are sure we had become insulin resistant. But one of the things that we're going to continue to talk about is that in the medical profession, and when we're getting our lab work, we're not testing for, it's not common to be testing what is your insulin levels getting to by this stage. Before, I mean, and 5.4 is already getting to pre-diabetes. We're trying to educate medical professionals. Let's start looking for A1Cs in the 4s, in the high 4s and low 5s. Let's start to think by the time we're getting to 5.4, we're getting a little too close to starting with pre-diabetes, and diabetes we shouldn't wait until we get to 6s and 6.5s to say someone has diabetes and they need to do something, right?
No, and I don't think I ever got tested. So I'm convinced that I was pre-diabetic at the time when we started this. Kind of wish that I'd known about all these blood tests and stuff that I should have had a baseline bunch of tests done just to compare it to. But we didn't even know that was a thing we should be thinking about when we started. So Yeah. So
So I
I mean
think-
that's
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's how we got started on this. And then 5 months later, it was my birthday in January, and I was pounding my fist to pair with Pam, saying like, hey, like we need to what we were doing in the business at the time involved putting on big conferences. And I was trying to say, how did I not know about this? Everything had come back to normal. My weight was back to what I was when I was running these ultra marathons in my 30s. And I just thought, like, why didn't I know about this? And what can we do to help other people who don't know about this? And well, there were little conferences at the time about low carb, but nothing big. And I was saying to Pam, we need to put 1,000 people in the room. Like, this is ridiculous that people don't know about this. And so that's how we started planning the low carb conference. That was in January, and we ended up putting it on at the end of July that same year. We didn't have a website, we didn't have social media presence, we had nothing. And we found a bunch of speakers that were prepared to come and speak. And we put it on, and it was pretty amazing. I mean, Pam can like attest to this. Like, we had friends of ours that were helping us as volunteers that weren't even really keto at the time, and they had gone outside in the evening during the pre-registration that we had the night before to get something to eat, and they saw these people running around in the street. And she said, or the both of them said, it was like, it was surreal. Like, these people were running around in the streets, like, so excited about the fact that this conference was on, and they were going to get a chance to meet all of these heroes of theirs and superstars that they had only ever seen on YouTube before. So yeah, I mean, and at the time we were only going to put on one conference. That was the idea. And then everybody was saying, so when is next year's one? And why don't you come to the East Coast? And you know, we started planning. I stayed up through the night and started planning the one for the next year. And a few months later, 6 months later, in the January, we ended up putting one on in Florida, in West Palm Beach then at the time. You know, and since then we've been doing like at least one in San Diego and one in Florida every year. We've done one in San Francisco, in Seattle. We've done a one-day one in Virginia. And we even took a few speakers over to Jakarta in Indonesia and helped a guy put on a conference there. And this one that's coming up in January is going to be our 20th event, which is that's a hell of a milestone. So we're quite excited about that. It's going to be pretty amazing.
How many conferences you have per year?
2
Well,
normally.
We've got to the stage where we try to resist it as much as possible to put on more than 2, because there was a time, was it 4 or 5, even in a 12-month period, that we ended up putting on. It was hell. It was crazy, and we were totally overcommitted ourselves. Then saying that, we were literally on a call yesterday with a pharmacist who's based in Hawaii, and we're talking about possibly doing something like a women's metabolic health conference in Hawaii in March-ish 2025. So that will be a 3rd one that year that we do, but generally it's 2.
Very interesting. I think so. You were the guys who started the first low-carb conference in USA. So there was no one.
No. There were other conferences on at the time. The Metabolic Health Summit was on.
It used
in
to be
Florida.
called Metabolic Therapy something. and Jeff
Yeah,
Gerber.
I mean, low carb Denver.
Denver,
I think they had one for the first time the year before. In fact, Jeff Gerber, who was the doctor who put that one on, was incredibly helpful with us to put our one on. You know, he gave me a lot of help and insight and information into what we should even be thinking about and what we should be doing and what we needed to do to make this actually work. But they were small, and so you know, when we ended up, we didn't put 1,000 people in the room. We put 350 people in the room. But that was still a lot bigger than any of the other little conferences that existed at the time. You know, and Denver has superseded us. I think the biggest San Diego event we had before COVID was 650. I think they had about 800 or something at an event that they did in Denver the year before COVID happened. And they were going to put that many at least in the room again in 2020. And we actually were at that conference. And that was literally the weekend that the entire world shut down. So there was a lot of people didn't show up for that conference. And there's some of us that did show up and mentioned it on social media. There was a lot of flack that was being thrown around about, well, we shouldn't be traveling and we shouldn't have gone, and it actually got quite ugly. But you know, like, I knew what Jeff was going through in terms of how much money he was going to end up losing, because he was still committed. There was no mandate that we weren't allowed to have a conference in the hotel at that stage yet. And so, you know, we were going to, he had to do it. And I knew what the contracts looked like that he would have signed. And the room blocks that he had committed to, which he's on the hook for, the food and beverage minimums that he's on the hook for, that when those weren't met, he had to come up with that money. And it was huge bucks. And so we felt like the least we could do was actually show up to his event and show him some support, you know. But yes, there were other conferences before ours, but I think I'd like to feel like we started to lead the way in terms of getting more people at these conferences, which was a kind of our aim. We wanted to get as many people, expose as many people as possible to this. You know, and then the others all looked around and said, yeah, we could be doing more. And they've ended up getting some big numbers at their events as well, which is awesome.
It's nice that we could inspire others because others have inspired us. We also saw, we want to thank Rob Taylor at Low Carb Down Under, because he had done some original conferences. Tim Noakes had done a conference in South Africa, and we actually found those online as we were starting to get the idea of planning a conference. Doug had wanted to do a coaching program because he really wanted to reach the individual. And then we thought maybe we should think bigger. Like, these guys are doing conferences and we kind of have that experience. Bring the science, bring and provide a platform for people to talk about the research they're doing, to talk about the benefits and the outcomes of doing and changing, making lifestyle and dietary changes. And we really saw that the importance, Jeff helped us see the importance of having CMEs at the conferences and bringing more healthcare professionals, because the more times over that we heard from an individual that they couldn't find the help they needed because they were sick, they had a really bad car accident and they were injured and they couldn't get the proper help to help them with a brain injury, that we're now finding ketogenic diets very helpful with brain and head injury, the neurological symptoms, in injuries and injuries from stroke and cardiovascular disease and neurological disease that we're learning about. So it was very early on at that very first 2016 conference that we realized that we really needed to focus on the healthcare professional, reaching them and bringing them in to get the education and raise the awareness, because more doctors and physicians need nutritional information that they're not getting in medical school. And we need to continue. That's why we've made so much effort and commitment to make sure that we're reaching the medical professional, because currently there's a nutrition profession and then there's the physicians, and we kind of need to bring that together. Physicians and treating clinicians, like we have nurse practitioners and physician assistants here. That would be the part of the treating and the clinical doctor who needs nutritional information to bring to their patients, and make that more of an open process that happens more often and is more widely accepted.
And I think it's wonderful what you're doing is this conference, you're bringing the latest science and the evidence-based science. The medical doctors are coming and speaking on the therapeutic potential of low carb. I think it is wonderful, and all these conferences are actually changing the landscape. It is giving an option to people that there is something which is beyond the pill, and it can be adopted. No doubt pills will be useful. It has its own utility, but if someone wants a reduced number of tablets or want to get off anything, I think this is what you're providing. Yeah, Anup.
Yeah, Pam talked of, others inspiring for conferences. Now, 3 years back, we were inspired by both of you. And that's why, I talked of at least holding some sort of a conference here. So, though virtual, but we have made a beginning, and we hope to have, physical conferences also someday, for sure. Now, with that
That'd
said,
be amazing.
Yeah, I
Thank
think
you.
we can help you with that. And
yeah, sure.
I think I mentioned to you, or Shashi, or both of you, that there's an organization called Health Quest that's just getting spun up now. They're trying to raise funding to actually do this, but they looking at creating this global, what they're calling a global ecosystem of doctors and health insurance and training and all sorts of stuff that that people can have access to. And one of the things they're bringing me on board for is to help them to improve the attendance at the current conferences that exist, and also to find gaps in the US and around the world of where it would be really good to have a physical conference. And India is definitely one of the top of the lists, from not even from us, but from them, saying, we want you to identify these places, but already you need to be looking at India. So they're already identifying the fact that something there, you've got such a huge population who so many are suffering that, it's really important that we try to reach more people by putting on, and because the thing is, if you put on a physical conference, then suddenly something's actually happening in India, and that becomes a thing that people hear about, and then the majority of them won't be able to actually come, but they will be able to join the live stream.
Yeah.
But they will have become aware of it in the first place because you're putting on this live conference, and that there's probably been, that's the kind of thing that we, as with HealthQuest, we would help with, is to promote it and get it out to the media and make sure that people hear about it. And that's the way we spread the word, Like Pam's favorite quote from Prof. Noakes is, we're changing the world one meal at a time. And that's literally what we have to do, is go and scrape and slowly build out this thing organically. Because there's not going to be any help from the US dietary guidelines or any other kind of dietary guidelines that's going to encourage people to at least take a look at this. We have to physically go out and find the people, and involving India is a big part of that.
And we are ready for this, Doug. And in fact, let me tell you, me and Anup, we are hosting this from a state called Goa, from Taj Siddharthi, Goa. And we are enjoying all low-carb keto menu.
Wow.
So we are ready for physical conference because we identified a joint where we can get our meals.
Where you can do it. That's brilliant. Yeah, no, I look forward to it. You said in sometime in the future. I'm hoping in the near future. I think I would look forward to coming out and being a part of that.
Yeah,
Please,
sure.
we'll invite you. So now please tell us something about this SMHP. How did you come out with this idea? What it is and how significant it is for all of us?
Well, I think, again, I'm going to ask Pam to at least tell the beginning part of the story, because she had a conversation with Dr. Trokalajian at our Boca conference just before COVID in 2020 that I wasn't even aware of until a couple of months later. And that's really kind of where it started. So maybe Pam can talk about that.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so Tro came in and I thought, the first night it's pre-registration, it turns it a little bit of social hour. And he came in right away he wanted to talk about how much he thinks was needed, the work to put together a society to support the physicians and the clinicians who are working in the field. And we had a very long discussion where I actually wasn't ready for, but he was very adamant about the need for this society. As Tro can be. Very, and he wanted to bring together a place that would support physicians who want to do this in their practice, bring together the evidence and the science and the research and the clinical protocols. 2019 in May, the clinical guidelines that the whole world of experts contributed to writing, and I've heard Adele Height's name mentioned earlier from Cecile. We all worked really closely with Adele, who had this mission to put this clinical guidelines together. I'll let Doug talk a little bit more about how he got the board of advisors together for that. Worldwide leaders that you've had, Dr. Unwin, we've talked about Prof. Noakes, you've had Gary Fekke on earlier today, who all contributed their expertise to this document, where the SMHP, the Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners, now has a home for the clinical guidelines of the application of therapeutic carbohydrate reduction as a valid intervention in practice, where it has the research, the history of nutrition recommendations. It has all the nuts and bolts of what is a ketogenic diet, what is a low carb diet, what is a moderate low carb diet, what can you expect to see, what can you expect to eat, what can a physician make sure he needs to focus on with medications. Do they need to be just de-prescribed off of medications before making adjustments in their carbohydrate intake? They're going to need to make adjustments in the medication they're taking that isn't unnaturally or through pharmaceutical intervention lowering their their blood glucose. So they don't want to eat a low carb diet and then take a medication that's also lowering their blood glucose, because then they're going to have a problem with really low blood sugars. And we don't want them to get sick doing this. We want them to be able to take them, have the physician be able to take them off of the medication and then lower their blood sugar naturally through their diet. Same thing with high blood pressures. You don't want to have somebody's blood pressure coming down from the nutritional changes that they're making, because there's been probably a few people who talked about how high carbohydrate intake and high insulin as a result of makes people have high blood pressure. So once you change that, their blood pressure is coming down and they'll need to change their blood pressure medication. So many people are taking blood pressure medications. So they need to make sure that doctors are aware of how this needs to happen while they're doing that. So those are just things that we want to talk about through the SMHP. Doug, to go back to the story of how it came about, was Pam had this big conversation with Tro, and nobody told me about it. And one of the things apparently that he did say, so did you talk to Tro yet?
One of the things that apparently he mentioned was like, we need to have this organization, and I think Doug would be a good person to do it.
That's true.
And I was unaware of that, but he obviously had this bee in his bonnet, and so in February-ish, a month or so later, I actually saw him. He put a Twitter post on, saying we need to have an organization that represents all the metabolic health practitioners. well, he didn't actually use that term, that came along later, but basically practitioners that are using this intervention in their practice, they need support. And
Doug put his hand up.
And I wrote to him and I said, we're already starting to do that, or we had the idea that it was necessary. We had this concept of a professional membership in LowCarbUSA, and we had by then published the clinical guidelines on the LowCarbUSA website. And it got, a lot of people got to see it, but it wasn't the right place for it. We didn't have anywhere else to publish it. And then so I spoke with him, we went backwards and forwards, and eventually decided that we needed to have this organization. By then, COVID had come in and taken over the world. And I was sitting at home and I started to create this nonprofit organization, which was kind of working with the government and organizations to try and, just get the licenses and all of the stuff that needs to be done officially was even more difficult now, because those departments were originally shut down and then they opened up again with skeleton crews working from home and all of that kind of stuff. But somehow we managed to get the nonprofit established. I put a board of directors together with a lot of people that I think you're having on during this weekend. And in the December of 2020, we actually launched it. And we had no idea whether anybody else would think it was a good idea. And yet we launched it and suddenly people started signing up. It was incredible. And as Pam said, now we've migrated the clinical guidelines there. We've got a really cool provider search database now that people can search for type of physician, their name, what kind of specialties. They can put in a zip code or a country in the case of, India or something, and try and find people that are there. We don't have many, I don't believe, in India yet. It's something we need to work on. We got a whole ton of people in Malaysia and Indonesia, all based on that trip that we did with Gary Fedke and Georgia Eid and Garrick Westman, that we went to their conference there. And a whole ton of their doctors he's a bit like me. This is Tio Presateo that organized this. He's an engineer, but he's helped his son with cerebral palsy to basically walk again by changing his diet. And so he goes around personally and he holds grand rounds at hospitals and places, and he now has hundreds of doctors following him and following this low carb practice. So he's done an amazing job, and a lot of those people have already signed up with the SMHP as providers, which people can do for nothing. Like, it's to put your information in there is free. Contact info, what you do, everything. In order to listen to the grand rounds that we do and to become accredited, which you mentioned earlier, you were the first Indian accredited SMHP member. But we need to be able to get more of you guys on board. That's the whole thing. But what I think I was trying to say is we got so many people that joined as members. I was going to say you need to be a member in order to become accredited. You need to be a member in order to join the grand rounds and participate in the forums and everything. And we thought that would be a problem, and yet more and more people are signing up. I think Pam was the 70th person that eventually got accredited, and we've had a few more now that have come through since. And we were in Australia a few weeks ago at Low Carb Down Under, and we were in Denver at Low Carb Denver in March, and we had a table at both of those places, for the SMHP, and so many people came to the table was saying like, we're so happy that we were able to find you guys, and I'm about to get accredited. I've got one more course to do before I can submit my application, and so we know that there are tons of people that are in the pipeline somewhere in that accreditation process. And I often say, I've tried so many businesses and so many projects and stuff like that through my life that I thought were brilliant ideas, worked really, really hard at implementing them, and nobody came. It turns out I was the only person who thought it was a good idea. And yet we still did this, but I was really nervous because this has happened to me so many times in my life that I'd done something and created something and put it out there, and nobody thought it was a good idea. And I was really nervous that this would be the same, but it's been pretty much the opposite. Anybody that hears about it sees immediately how beneficial this could be. We saw in Australia, that was one of the reasons that we went there, was to do a presentation there about the SMHP. And there was a lot of people at that conference that didn't know about that it even existed. And so many people came up to the table and said, I can't believe I didn't know about this. This is amazing. This is just what we need. And so, yeah, establishing that accreditation process, I think, was one of the best things that we did. But since then, I was telling Pam, she was asking what else we need to talk about, and I had also to make sure that she reminded me if I forgot to talk about it, and that's the journal. There was a journal of insulin resistance that existed that had very little going on. And we approached them and said, look, we'd like to take this over as the SMHP, make it the official SMHP journal, rename it and rebrand it to the Journal of Metabolic Health. And we literally announced the launch of that. I actually was finalizing it on the long haul flight over to Australia to go to that conference a few weeks ago. So the journal is launched now, and we really know tons of people that are looking at and trying to find out how they can submit case studies and papers that they, trials that they are doing. And we feel like that's going to be such a big thing in terms of adding the perception of legitimacy to the existence of this organization, to anybody who hasn't heard about it, wants to look, and they can see, wow, they've got this accreditation process, they've got a journal. This is a real medical society organization, and it's not just some fly-by-night group of hackers that have decided that they want to do something. So we're pretty proud of how it's evolved. And I even said when I ended my talk in Australia, was like, considering we've got our 20th conference coming up in January, and that this SMHP has evolved out of that and exists and is doing so well. That's pretty amazing for the two of us thinking that we'd put on one conference in San Diego back in 2016. It's been incredible.
I think that's an incredible journey you have. And I am also so happy, and I'm very proud to display my SMHP accreditation. And that is why when we met last time, and we and Anup, we spoke to you that, give some recognition to D-Life diploma course also. Plus, you can add some more courses, and you will have a lot of members from D-Life coming in as for the accreditation itself. So this itself is a potential member, and we need a lot of metabolic health practitioners in India. We need with the kind of metabolic disorders we have. It is just like a huge mountain, and Anup is trying to somehow bridge it or win the mountain through an army of metabolic health practitioners here as coach
Yeah.
currently, but we would like to have a tag of practitioners. I think we will look forward for this collaboration in the coming time. And regarding the SMHP, I think there are a lot of resources there, download like the CGM, the insulin resistance part, the low carb.
Yeah.
And even I think you had a TCR present, of course, the information on TCR. And I've seen even you had put some information on Dr. Anwin's studies also, I think.
Not so much about his study, but it definitely the sugar table that he published that's been used around the world. But just to go back a second, Pam actually mentioned that we should probably do this. You mentioned that you are accredited and everything, and maybe we want to turn the tables on you a little bit and say, when you saw this, what was it that made you think this is something I need to do? And how, I know you say you display it everywhere and you talk about it a lot, but how valuable is this to what you're doing and to anybody else who might want to be doing this?
So your question is to me or Pam?
Yeah, to you, yeah.
To me, very good. See,
Yeah.
now, see that accreditation is the mark that we have gained the highest knowledge of this. And then we have support of an organization behind my back. A support of a organization which is involved in a lot of conferences, evidence-based science. And I think that it itself is a stamp of approval that this person has sufficient competency and knowledge. And this is how I see. And that is how it is. So that's why some of even our DLF members have done not only DLF course, they have even joined Nutrition Network course in the preparation for getting this SMHP accreditation. So I think, and this is the way forward. I think you guys have made something very big. And this stamp of approval is something which people will yearn for. And it is aspirational, let me tell you. It has an aspirational value.
That's amazing. Yeah. So that's kind of what I wanted to hear you say, because that's what we were hoping it would mean to people. And the fact that so many people are working on it and have already achieved the status makes us realize that that what we were hoping for was actually coming true. And I mean, this was totally unscripted, right? So we just asked you out of the blue about that. And so the fact that you said exactly what we want to hear without scripting it is pretty amazing. And
you will find that logo in my Twitter DP, even in my LinkedIn.
Everywhere. That's cool.
So I'm very proud to display that. And the amount of respect I get even from international community is huge when they see that this is a guy who is having that accreditation from SMHP. It has huge value.
That's so amazing. And I want to talk about my appreciation for that, because partnering with the Nutrition Network for the courses and all the evidence-based information that's all been put together for you as a practitioner to learn, to have guidance from, to use as validation of, to say I have this education is really important. For you to display that very proudly means so much. And we hear often, and not that we're surprised, but it just validates the work that we're doing to put this all together, because doctors have written to us and said, this means more to me than the day I got my medical degree, because now I know I can make a difference, more of a difference than I was making. And it's like, wow. It gives you chills to think this is changing the face of their medical practice. It's changing because doctors are getting frustrated. They're not making the difference that they went into medical school to make. Their patients are becoming more metabolically sick. There are more patients, like Dr. Unwin talked about. He had a couple of patients with type 2 diabetes, and they were in their 80s 30 years ago. Now every other patient has type 2 diabetes, and now he has a solution for them. But it took him over the years. He had to learn this, and it wasn't from his medical school. You know, his patient, Doug tells a story that Dave came back and told him, he says, my patient was angry with me that I didn't have this information for her. She learned, the one first patient that taught him, she learned it from somewhere else, not from him. So we need to raise awareness and bring more information to more medical professionals so they can provide these tools and resources to the patient to help them and support them to make changes, and why, you know, how they can not have type 2 diabetes that's chronic and progressive, that you're only going to get sicker, that you're only going to need more medication. It doesn't have to be that way. And also in a medical professional where, we had a physician write to us a couple of years ago and say, I'm doing an expo and I want to use the logo. Can you send me the logo so that I can make a poster? They're allowing me to make a presentation about metabolic health at my organization. And we were so proud. We're like, that's amazing. And then she linked us to her website, and it showed us that she was using her logo. She was showing her accreditation. She was listing all the things. What is metabolic health? What is metabolic disease? What are the things that we can go over with you and fix? Like we were just talking about high blood pressure, lowering blood sugars, type 2 diabetes, and a whole list of other things. But she was also able to tell us that accreditation, like you're saying, brought validity to her metabolic health practice. She was able to bring that to her organization and say, I have this training. I'm a metabolic health practitioner. I would like to open up a metabolic health clinic at our organization. And they allowed her to do that based on her education. It was a pilot program to start, where she did a part-time office. But as the couple of years that have gone by, she has more and more referrals from endocrinologists, from weight loss doctors, from the general practitioner who says, I have a patient who needs to lose weight, who wants to lose weight, and that with your help, I know they can do that. Cardiovascular doctors are sending their patients to her because they know that she has information about heart health and maybe limiting the possibility of having a stroke, and all their blood pressure, women's health, helping them with PCOS and infertility. All of these metabolic health problems that can be addressed by looking at insulin resistance, lowering blood sugar, lowering insulin, and her organization is understanding this, which is fantastic because we need more of that. It just reminded me, I wanted to tell you because I don't want to run out of time. I know you probably have some feedback to that, but it reminded me that Matt Calkins, who's the head of our resources committee, who's been helping with those handouts, the insulin resistance handout, is free and downloadable on the smhp.org website. Everybody can download insulin resistance. What is it? How can you help it? How can you reverse it and get more insulin sensitive? Just some basics. A physician can make a poster and put that on their wall. A dietitian can make a poster and put that on their wall. The therapeutic carbohydrate reduction one, the TCR one, you can just print it out as a handout. You can download it and send it in an email as an e-document, post it on social media, any of these documents that we're talking about. The resource committee headed by the doctor of clinical pharmacy that we were talking about in Hawaii, head of our advocacy committee, has worked with the other MHPs that you know, Tia Reed and Karen Zabaka and the people in her committee to put together that insulin resistance one. We have a CGM. What is the benefits of a CGM? What is a CGM, first of all? What are the benefits? How do you use it? One for patients, one for practitioners. So some of them are variable for the patient and the practitioner. You can look, there's 2 different places that you can go on that resources tab. But on the practitioner one, Matt Calkins, the head of the resources committee, has put together a video and a slide deck that people can use who may be a practitioner who want to go to their organization and say, I want to start a metabolic health clinic. This is why. It has statistics of metabolic dysfunction, how many people have insulin resistance, how many people are getting and will be forecasted to get diabetes in the future. And this is how we address it. And I want to do this in my location. So he's put together resources for a physician assistant, a nurse practitioner, a nurse to say, I want to do this in my practice, and this is how I want to, this can help them approach their employer or their organization.
And I also need to jump in here quickly because it was something that I forgot, is that the clinical guidelines that we migrated over to the SMHP has also been translated into like 11 other languages, 10 other languages. And Hindi is one of them.
Mhm.
And we're actually working with Gapriya to get it in a couple of other major Indian languages as well. So yeah, any of your physicians or whatever that may be listening to this, or that you can even print this out and give it or send it electronically to people that may be interested. I think that's pretty cool.
I think that was very, very interesting development. And I think everyone should know that the kind of pioneering work you guys have done. And I think the achievement of floating this MHP was something, it's very big, and I think it's a game changer. Personally, I see that it's a game changer. Even you have changed the name of Low-Carb USA conference to now Symposium of Metabolic Health. So everything is diverging towards, it's going towards or
Metabolic health.
unifying towards the metabolic health.
Yeah.
And one part is like, as I say, that seeing me, many people are inspired now in India. They keep asking me, how do I do this? How do I get the certification?
amazing.
So that is, and my wish is that each of my colleague or friends in DLF, everyone should have this SMHP certification. That is my sincere desire for all of my colleagues, because I think that is going to be a game changer in helping the population. So I think Anup and you can work together and get some sort of recognition, so that by adding a few more courses to this, maybe from Nutrition Network, we can design something for India, so that my colleagues in DLife diploma courses can also get this accreditation. So I look forward for this. Anup, you want to say anything?
Yeah, that's all. That's all we are nearing about. We've got about 3 minutes left. So
Yeah.
before we close, what are the future plans? Besides, of course, collaboration, between us, what are the future plans?
I don't know, to just keep finding ways to get this out there. Yeah, like when we had the first conference, we didn't have any future plans, and it's just everything's just evolved. So we constantly, I think this Health Quest might be the next kind of phase of I think what that's going to be is going to have a lot of money behind it, which we've never had in this low-carb community before, so that we can have the money to advertise about it and put it out there in the media that costs money. We're growing organically through social media and stuff, but to actually put a big money behind it will kind of have a step function effect in terms of the number of people that we manage to reach. Putting on conferences in places like India, and we're talking about Dubai or Abu Dhabi. I'll probably go back and do another one in Indonesia. All those things. I mean, just as ideas come to us, most of the time it makes me weak at the knees initially, and then you think about it a bit more and think, okay, we can do this. So yeah, just to find more ways to reach more people.
Thank you.
And
Yeah.
can I add to that? I'm sorry,
Yes,
Shashi.
yes.
So we recently started doing something where we focus a little bit more on one topic and one day of our conference. We did food addiction 2 ones ago in Florida, and it was very well received to have that big focus. It got the people who are really interested to talk about food addiction. How if you don't talk about how addictive processed foods and carbohydrates and sugar are, you're never going to help a lot of people, because they're not going to be able to make that change. Besides talking about cultural aspects of like your culture has certain foods they eat, there's a lot of addictive foods that people have trouble giving up. So navigating that. Last year we did cancer, a focus on oncology in the SMH Symposium Metabolic Health San Diego. Next year in Florida, we're doing type 1 diabetes, very under talked about area where people who have children or family members or that have type 1 diabetes themselves have a lot of trouble getting the support to help them with that disease. Next year in San Diego, we're going to do mental health and all the research that you talked about a little bit more earlier today about how mental health can be helped with dietary nutritional changes. And the type 1 diabetes one specifically is there's a lot of work being done behind the scenes in SMHP to do addendum specific clinical guidelines to talk about specifically type 1 diabetes, specifically type 2 diabetes, specifically oncology. So whenever we can get those committee members together who can work on these so we can publish them and get those published, that's a lot of work going that will also get published in the Journal of Metabolic Health. So thank you.
So thank
for your
you.
time.
A big vote of thanks to both of you for appearing for this. And also thank you for having me and Anup in a special podcast specifically for this conference,
Yes.
which you have floated. And we are so thankful.
Thankful.
Rest of it, we'll take it in mail and we will get back. We look forward for solid collaboration. In case you're coming to India, then please have conference with us. We are here ready for you. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll-
Namaste.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anup.
cheers.
Thank you, Shashi.
Yeah.
Please let us know how we can help in
Yeah.
any way that
We'll
the work
take it
that
in
you're
mail.
doing
Thank
going
you.
forward.